Shalom. Originally there were 13 tribes of Israel. Originally there were 13 tribes of Israel. The tribe of Joseph was divided into two, Ephraim and Manasseh. So actually there were 13 tribes. But number 12 is maintained in the Bible by sometimes counting Joseph as two tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh, or sometimes counting it as one tribe, or in other ways, changing how we number them, so that there's always 12 tribes. Now, these 12 tribes settled in the land of Canaan, which was renamed Israel. The land of Canaan was renamed Israel. They conquered it from the original inhabitants, and they divided it up amongst their tribes. And they were supposed to drive these tribes out. They were supposed to drive these Canaanite pagans out of the land, but they did not do so, or rather they did not do so in every place. In some areas they did, in other areas they didn't. In some areas, they conquered all the land and drove out all of the inhabitants. In others, they themselves became a minority, especially concerning the tribes of Asher and Naphtali. They became a minority in their own areas. And they intermixed with the Canaanites, and they learned their ways, and they became degenerate like them. And they'd gone against the will of the Almighty. They became pagans, effectively pagan, and they've forgotten that the law, ceased to practice the law. They followed pagan gods. And according to some sources, that even ceased to practice circumcision. And eventually, 10 of these tribes were driven out of the land. First they divided, first they separated, they split into two different sections. Judah in the south and the northern tribes in the north. The northern tribes are referred to as Ephraim, as the kingdom of Israel, and also as Samaria, after the chief city of the northern kingdom, and as Joseph and as Ephraim. It all depends upon the context of the verses. At all events, this northern kingdom was conquered by the Assyrians. All of its inhabitants were taken into exile, were taken to the north. A portion of them were taken overseas in ships, but most of them were taken by foot to northern areas. In these northern regions, they eventually asserted their independence from Assyria, joined up with other forces in the region, became part of different confederations, and due to the wars and the interactions that were going on at that time, they moved, they migrated. They migrated to the north, they migrated into what's now Russia, into Eastern Europe, and from there they all moved along different pathways to Western Europe, Western and Northern Europe, and they converged in that region of Western and Northern Europe, and elements from different tribes tended to converge in the same areas, as if directed by an unseen distinctive force to go to certain regions. And we can identify them according to names where we find them. And to make it short, the lost 10 tribes were in Western Europe. They were in areas of Western Europe and in the British Isles. From the British Isles, they populated North America, Canada, and Australia, also South Africa, New Zealand, and other regions. All of these regions have common denominators, something in common with each other. And it had been indicated in the prophets that that is what would happen. So we'll look at some of the prophets, some of the verses, and we'll see. Isaiah 26:15 says, "You have increased the nation, O Lord, you have increased the nation, that you are glorified. You have expanded all the borders of the land, you have stretched the land out. Stretch them out to all the ends of the earth." Ends of the earth is used here. Well, so we find in Isaiah 41, verses 8 to 9, you Israel, referring to Israel, are my servant, Jacob whom I have chosen, the descendants of Abraham my friend, you whom I have taken from the ends of the earth, at the ends of the earth, again, the geographical extremities, ends of the earth, and called from his fatherless regions, and said to you, you are my servant, I have chosen you, and have not cast you away. Isaiah 41, 8, 9. Now this expression, you whom I have taken from the ends of the earth and called from his farthest regions. So the Hebrew words translated as farthest regions are Atzileha. Atzileha can connote farthest, it can connote noble, best, chief, primary, and also can indicate something that comes later, something that is projected out, something that develops this area, these your upper arms in Hebrew are called by the same name, Atzilim. They project out from the body. And they come after the body is already there. And so this word Atzileah, these can indicate projections, emanations that come later, that extend outwards later, indicating that the first of those 10 tribes when at the ends of the earth, there were islands, so we will see, and peninsulas, and afterwards they established colonies overseas. That is their actual layer, their extensions. And these colonies became Canada, the USA, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and other areas. This is what they did, and this is what they were supposed to do. And they had been chosen by the Almighty. Rabbi Moshe David Valley in the 1700s said the lost 10 tribes, that Israel, that is the lost 10 tribes, went down to the level of the Gentiles, became like the Gentiles, assimilated amongst the Gentiles, in order to develop and elevate themselves and bring the rest of the world up with them. This is what the lost 10 tribes have done. Isaiah continues. Isaiah also says, Isaiah 43:6, say to the north, give them back. To the south, do not keep them back. Bring my sons from afar and my daughters from the ends of the earth. Again, Isaiah 49:6, it is too small a thing that you should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob. The tribes of Jacob are spoken of. And to restore the preserved ones of Israel. I will also give you as a light to the Gentiles, a force in civilization and bring in civilization and reforming the Gentiles from within, that you should be my salvation to the ends of the earth, at the geographical extremities, such as we find Scandinavia, we find the Netherlands, we find France, we find the British Isles. Also, we find North America, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, all those areas. If you look at the map, they're literally speaking, they are at the ends of the geographical extremities. They are at the ends of the earth. Isaiah 69 says, surely the coastlands, the islands in Hebrew, are Ephraim, the islands shall wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish first. Tarshish was an area in southwest Spain, known as Tarsus to the Phoenicians, Tartessus to the Greeks. It was a city, an emporium, a place of where merchants came together. It was also near silver mines, very important silver mines and other mineral products in that area. It's important in ancient times, and it gave its name to the Atlantic Ocean, which it borders. It's near Gibraltar, and Hebrew writings, rabbinical writings, the ships of Tarshish understood to mean ships flying the Atlantic Ocean. In other words, ships flying the Atlantic Ocean will bring the lost 10 tribes back when they return. Also, he says in Jeremiah 31:9-10, for I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Ephraim is my firstborn. Ephraim was the firstborn son of Joseph. He was the favorite son. He was the one who was chosen, more chosen than Manasseh, but Manasseh was also chosen. Manasseh was his brother, and he is referred to as the firstborn. And to hear the word of the Lord, our nations declared in the islands afar off, and say, he who scattered Israel will gather him and keep him as a shepherd does his flock. Jeremiah 31:9-10. We have the lost 10 tribes according to these verses at the ends of the earth. We have them in islands, in peninsulas, and at the geographical extremities. And that is where we find descendants of the English-speaking peoples, who history indicates do descend from the lost 10 tribes of Israel. The British-speaking peoples are part of the European peoples. They came there from the Assyrian Empire, from the outlying areas of the Assyrian Empire, who rebelled against the Assyrians, moved out and moved north and westward along different pathways, and eventually all came together, converged in the west. Now we do not know what proportion of the peoples in those regions do descend from Israel. And even when they were in the land of Israel, they had intermixed with foreign peoples. But nevertheless, the Bible indicates that they will be incredibly numerous, one of the most numerous peoples on earth, as we will see. And so that we may assume that a good portion of the peoples in the regions we are speaking about do descend from lost tribes of Israel, but not necessarily all of them. Nevertheless, this message is for all of us. Anyone who hears this message should take it to heart, should learn the subject, and should realize that if it concerns them or potentially concerns them, they should worship God Almighty, learn the Bible, and understand what the Bible is saying to them. Additional talks will expand on these issues. Thank you.